All right. So, um, to start off with the first question, I'm just gonna try to go in order as best as possible. I might get offhand a couple of times, but hopefully we get through this pretty fast so we could get to it
No,
yesterday.
I get it. You'll be all right. And I tend to talk a lot, so be careful.
All right. So, just to start off, a little bit of background information about yourself. Your name, were you named after anybody, like a little story behind your name or anything like that? And then date of birth, where you're born and like what day?
Okay. So my full name is Norbert Souza Duarte. So Souza is my mother's maiden name. So culturally, that's how we were. There's no Thomas or John in between. But I tend to stick with the letter on a professional basis. I was born May 16th, 1975, and I was born here in the United States, and I was actually born almost 1 year to the date my parents arrived in this country.
Oh,
So
really?
they arrived May 1st. Yeah, May 1st of 1974, and I was born a year and 15 days later. Even though born here, I was very much raised in the old traditions with my family because they didn't know any different. You know, they came to this country, something better, the typical immigrant story, go where we can get a better life for ourselves, etc. And but we're raised the way we knew, and and I was born in Los Banos, California, so not terribly far. So I've always been a Central Valley kid, if you would. And then with all my, career and employments, I ended up in Visalia. So and here I am. I just moved back. In fact, I was gone for 4 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I moved to Merced for a hot minute, take care of some business and accommodate my other half's job promotion. But I was still working in Fresno, and I still do. And I was doing the commute, but had a compromise. Well, it got to the point where it's time to come back, where my parents are here in Visalia, and the family dynamic is here. And then that way I can help them out, and family, friends are all in this area. So it's where I've lived the longest. I've been a cumulative total of 20 years living here.
Yeah, a little connection. You said your birthday was May 16th. Mine's actually May 15th. So,
See? Day apart. You're not the only one. I have another friend that's also on the 15th.
oh, really? Yeah, I have a
Actually,
couple too.
we're 1 year, 1 day apart, so I'm older than him by a year and 1 day. But Tauruses, that's all that matters, right?
Exactly.
We're hard-headed.
We really are, yeah. Um, a couple of early memories you have as a kid being Portuguese American.
Mhm.
Uh, you probably said it, but little like when your family immigrated over here. I know you said May 1st. Um, and then just why did your family leave the Azores?
So it kind of goes back and forth. So it's funny, there's further history. Like my grandmother, my mother's side had a ties. She actually came as a child to the U.S. for a
Mm.
hot minute. I want to say they were here for like maybe 5, 6 years, and they went back, and then that's where she remained until she came as a widow. So there's that. I've had great grandparents that come temporarily to visit, but there's always been sort of connection with the United States, more so in California. So it came down to my mom and dad. They were married in December of 1973 and then immigrated 6 months later. At that point, my mother was the last sibling to leave the island, and my dad was the first because my dad was the oldest, my mom was the youngest. But during that time, it was still, I forget the exact term, but there was some legislation passed in the John F. Kennedy years that allowed for more immigration as long as you had a sponsor. So my aunt sponsored my mom as well as my other three uncles. But the first four came first, and my mother was engaged, so she waited to get married and then was married and then came 6 months later. And then my grandparents were scheduled to come, but my grandfather just never made it. He ended up passing not even a month before flying out. But my aunt was the first to come because her husband, my uncle, was in the military. He was born in the Azores, but at a young age came to the United States, um, became a citizen, and would visit the island because that's where his family's from, and then started dating my aunt. So talk about long distance relationship. It was literally from
Yeah.
California to the Azores. So their relationship developed. They got married, but first they married legally in the Azores, came to the United States, formal marriage, and then she did the the sponsorship for my three uncles, and then it was my mom. And so that's how we all ended up here. My dad's side of the family, only one other brother, my one uncle, came here for education, and he became a dentist, and he lives in Turlock. And then my other family on my dad's side all stayed in the Azores. But from my mom's side, we have no one left any there. If we have a distant cousin, maybe even then, it's they may not be alive anymore. That's how far back we go. So, but yeah, firstborn had to learn with the punches. Did not speak a lick of English. I started learning. My cousins were here. They would come and play. We'd learn little things. Then when it came to getting to school and everything else, I just had to kind of learn as we go. Again, I was born here, but what I
Yeah.
knew was what my parents were teaching me.
Yeah, I have a little similarity to that. Not personally myself, but my parents do. My parents are my grandparents come from Mexico, so I'm Mexican blood. So my parents had to deal with a little bit of that too. So they always told me like growing up like how their lives went and all that. So
Yeah. So I imagine they're probably my generation,
yeah, yeah,
yourself.
1980s, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of the same thing, but it was like learn as you go. And I think I can still relate. And again, if I'm going off topic, you can stop
No,
me.
no, you're perfectly fine.
Um, Growing up, I didn't know any different. And
Yeah,
maybe like your parents or your family, like we didn't know any different. Um, in the Central Valley, there is a large Hispanic, large Portuguese, large other cultures. So we were always in a community where Los Banos had a strong Portuguese community. And even then, kind of going back, interesting enough, when my parents came, they ended up going to the same farm that all of my uncles and my aunt were. So there's about a good year we all lived in this little compound. So they all lived on the dairy farmhouses. My uncles and my dad worked for the farm. My parents almost didn't have a job because there was no home to stay in, but my mother's uncle, who was already there, he says, "No, that's my niece and my nephew. They can stay with me, no problem." And then that's where we all got started. But we were all living all together close knit, and that's all we knew. You know, even though I was a
yeah,
baby, I see pictures of like, we'd be doing things in the yard all together with cousins playing, doing all that kind of stuff. And then eventually with, the need to improve our lives, people started going different directions. My mom and dad at some point ended up in Artesia, California. My dad was working for Safeway and then became a farmer. My three uncles also moved down to Artesia. Well, two uncles moved to Artesia, one to San Leandro, and then my aunt to Los Banos. So it just kind of went everywhere. But then eventually we all found one another again, whether within, a different easy driving distance or just getting together or that stuff. But that was our community. And so
yeah,
when you go into schools and everything else, you don't know any different. And, for me at least, because there was, in Gustine where I started school, there was Portuguese and Hispanic, so we kind of related in a lot of things. But again, I didn't know any different. Little things like if the teacher would ask a question like, "Oh, who has brand new shoes?" I'd raise my hand. It's like me, but they weren't new. But I didn't know any different.
yeah.
Uh, you know, Admittedly enough, I would actually sometimes play dumb, for lack of a better term, because I didn't want
Mhm.
to make fun of. If someone asked me a question about something pop culture, I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, exactly." I had no idea, but I would eventually figure it out. That kind of school of hard knocks until I was like, "Okay, now I know what it means." But yeah, well, that
Yeah,
was a lot of my life growing up, and sometimes
yeah.
it's not.
No, it's very interesting because to hear like I thought that a lot of cultures would be like a lot different, but the Portuguese and the Mexican culture have very like a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to hear it and learn more about it.
Well, we all come from Latin roots in one way
Yeah.
or another. Um, so yeah, there is a lot of similarities, and as a kid, did not know any different. Of course, as you grow up, you start learning about more cultures and more nuances and little things like we really did that, but that's what it was.
Okay, so to get on to the next question, how was this identity expressed? Like, how did you guys express your guys' selves? You said that you guys worked a lot and had a community. How did you guys celebrate and express your culture?
It always revolved around family and food, one way or another, and I think that's any culture can speak to that regard. But also even like little things. So I don't know how exposed you've been to some of the Portuguese community, but we have religious festivals that we have, festivals that we have throughout California. They're pretty prominent. And that was one of those things that started like, let's bring the tradition to the US. So it's something what we know. And, it evolved around religion and it still does. So it'd be those celebrations, which was usually Pentecost around the, springtime, April, May time. Winter time, there would be the large, we call them matanzas, where you would kill a pig, slaughter a pig, and we may, put away everything, cuts and stuff for the whole winter, and then you'd have a slaughtering of a cow, so it's things like that. But then also, just culturally, carnival, festivities, religious days, birthdays, even. Just, let's just all get together. I mean, as a kid, I didn't have birthday parties with kids from school. It was my cousins, my aunts, my uncles,
Yeah.
and we were having cake, ice cream, and some other stuff. And then once in a while, I'd be like, can I have pizza? You know, and I was like, what's that? I'm like, "Shit," you know. So little things like that. But that's pretty much what it revolved around. And to this day, a lot of us still do, even though the generations are changing. Like when I was growing up, it was very much like the celebration, it's very much Portuguese, very much a religion, very much involvement. But of course, naturally, like I'm not married to a Portuguese person. It's like, it's Hispanic. My sister's married to a white guy. My other sister's not married, but things are breaking up. So, like my nephews, they're not full Portuguese, they're half, although I'd still like to expose them to it and knowing that, okay, you may not be 100%, but at least understand where at least half of your culture
Yeah.
comes from. And so that's still kind of thing. And I stayed involved as much as I could because I want to continue that tradition. So yeah, we always find something to just kind of, do everything else. But then there's still work. So it would be whatever we can do to celebrate, whether it's sit down a meal, remembering a certain saint, certain religious holiday, or just having a good time.
I don't know if you mind my asking, but like why you said that you like to carry it on and it's natural to carry it on, but why to you, why is it important to carry it on, to maintain it?
It's my background, it's my root, it's my family, it's what I know. Um, you know, I don't have children of my own. I probably won't at this point in my life, but I have my young nephews, but I want to at least, continue that. Whether just sharing history or even just knowing the roots. I would like to think that one day I can take my nephews to the island, kind of like this is where Avul Naval came from. This is where your roots are from. This is that. They may never go again. I don't know, but I would like to be able to do that one day because I tend to remember a lot more than what my younger siblings do because
Mhm.
I would hear stories from my grandparents. I remember meeting my great grandparents. I remember birthdays and deaths and illnesses and all the nuanced stories. As I get older, I start digging in deeper about, okay, my great grandfather came in a certain year, but then it turns out he also came as a teenager multiple times, and then he had multiple siblings, and then it turned out there was also tragedy. He had two siblings that died in the Merced River from bathing because they were working for a ranch that there was no indoor plumbing, so they went to bathe, but they got caught in the current. So one was 19, the other was 17, both drowned unfortunately. So we had that family history, and then other aunts, great aunts, well, actually technically great great aunts on my end, and so I
Mhm.
started to kind of learn those things, stories my grandmother would tell me about when she came here to the United States, and then turned out it was actually Visalia. And she used to say, "Oh, I remember Visalia. I remember like the back road." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, Grandma, sure." And then turned out my aunt's like, "No, she's right. She was Visalia." I'm like, "Okay, all right." So little connections. But to me, it's oral history. Probably no different from any person. Like you like to know where you came from and kind of keep that alive and hopefully pass it on. Because like my generation, once it gets to my nephews, it's probably done. You may know your culture, but then will your kids know it too, or will they carry it
Yeah.
on? I mean, that's still to be determined. You're young, but I've seen that evolve as well, where I've seen people in my generation where they just don't care, or they don't even speak it anymore. And I still speak Portuguese on purpose, but it's also broken because when I go to the old country, I'm learning something new every time. Because I was there last a year ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not how you say that. Okay, now I know.
No, yeah, I get that completely because how I didn't grow, personally, I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. My parents kind of like they knew so much English that they were able to, okay, we could just teach them English. It's fine. I looking back, I really wish they would have taught me a little more Spanish growing up. But I definitely like whenever I talk to my grandparents, I understand what they're saying. It's just hard to get it out. So I can see what you mean by like it disappears as it goes on.
Yeah, and and it's not by choice. So I mean, we become Americanized where you start this anglicized versions of certain words. Um, when I went, it's funny. The first time I went to the Azores, it was 1982 or 83. So I know I was going into the third grade. It was like that summer before third grade. And I had cousins there, of course, only knew of them, never really talked. And
Yeah.
back then, if you wanted to make a phone call, you literally had to dial an operator, get a number, and hopefully it got through. And they'd make these calls, oh, the lines are full, we can't get through. So we would send cassette tapes of recordings like, hi, Marinette, how are you? It was nice to hear from you. So the little things. That's all I knew of my cousins. So I get there, like, hi, whatever, we're all hanging out, we get to know one another. And I remember a certain word that I was taught in an anglicized version, and it was for a tractor. And we were playing with some toys, and I said, "Oh, I was calling the tractor the way I knew it." And they looked at me and it's like, "No, it's this is how you say it." I'm like, "No, this is how you say it." I was like adamant, and of course I'm the oldest. I was like, "No, this is how you say it." Then my grandfather was there, he came with us, and he's like, "What's wrong?" I go, "They're saying you say it this way, and it's this way." And my dad, he's like, "No, they're right." I'm like, "Shit." And then, of course, it's evolving more. When I go back, they understand what I'm saying. We're speaking. In fact, my aunt and uncle were like, "You still speak very well for being American." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess, but I mean, I'm not educated in Portuguese. I can't have an educated. I don't say educated. I don't know certain vocabulary. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just certain things, certain nuances. I just don't know because I wasn't exposed to that. But I can carry a conversation. So.
Yeah.
But I'll do as long as I can, and hopefully my nephews will pick some up. But I already see it's not going to happen. There's
Yeah.
too much. There's too much English in.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I have little cousins too, and like they're just like, it's gone.
Yeah, and then, and I don't know. I mean, I've seen also where kids are like, I use it. I wish I knew more, and I'm going to say, well, you could
Yeah.
have, but chose not to. There's always different reasons. It's never too late, I think.
So you said you've been to the Azores a couple of times when you were younger, currently, just recently.
Mhm.
How have your experiences been? Like from back then to now, how would you say like the experience has been and how it has changed over time?
So, growing up, I always heard the stories of how my parents grew up. No electricity, no running water, and each villages were different. So on the island, you had the main cities where they were pretty much with the indoor plumbing and everything else and the infrastructure. But then the villages, like where my parents are from and others, didn't have that infrastructure right away. So little things like when electricity came through, it'd be like one light bulb, and then using an outhouse type of thing. So I'd hear those stories. So we're going to the Azores. Okay. And then I'm like, so there's no TV? Where do we take showers? And how do I do this? And like, oh, don't worry about it. And I was almost like wondering, where are we going to a third world country? And so when we get there, pleasantly surprised, it's like, oh, there is running water. However, it depends on a cistern if it's full and you would run out of water. On my first shower there, I'm taking a shower. I go to my mom, there's no more water. She's like, we used it all because you're supposed to, there wasn't like a constant.
Yeah.
So things like that, but then there was TV with one channel. Okay, so then we go back. At this point, I went again on my own. At that point, it had been maybe, oh God, 15 years later. So it was my high school trip. So a lot of time had gone by, but I went and already a big difference. My grandmother had regular running water, and then there was paving from the house and more traffic with cars, etc. Then I go again a few years later for during 9/11, actually, 2001. Again, big change. Now there's a garbage truck to take out your trash. Now there's more electricity. There's satellite TV. So definitely saw the progression. Um, but at the same time, the last time I went, like we used to see the fields full of crops. That's no longer a thing because now there's supermarkets. So everyone just go like we do here. We go and buy our corn. We don't grow it.
Yeah.
But when I went the first time, we were fields of corn. There was, cows on the road. There was things happening. So there's still some multi traditions. And also seeing too how the village where my family's from has dwindled down, where people in my generation moved out and went to the city, or folks have passed away, and it's just it's kind of, I don't want to say dying off, but you definitely see the change, like, so high, and then it's just more like, okay, here we're at. Culture is still there, the ties are still there, but it's improved. At the same time, it's a big difference in comparison.
Yeah. Time changes a lot of things
Sure
because
did.
I know because even just in the short time, because the first time I went to Mexico, I was I want to say like 15 years old,
Hmm.
and it just felt like a different like a culture shock a little bit. Um, so when I went and similar situation too with the water, the showering, you had to get the bucket and everything. I was like, wow, this is like different. I never had
Yeah.
experienced this before. And then going back, I went back last year. I was 19. Just in that 4 year, 5 year time span, it just felt like everything was going a lot smoother. Like
Yeah.
the conditions there at my grandmother's house, they had like improved greatly. I was like, it's just 4 years and it feels like everything's a lot more different now.
And
But
it's good improvement.
yeah, yeah,
It's
definitely.
great. But I do, like I said, me and others, we've definitely seen how it was like, okay, we have to take a bath and not a shower, or we'd have to kind of walk, there was no candy bars like we were used to, things like that they took for granted. But now everything's there and then some. And, internet, who would have thought that
Oh
there's,
yeah.
the last time I went, not this last time, but the one before, there was internet, don't get me wrong, but then I'm going into these cafes. Oh, do you want Wi-Fi? Do you want Wi-Fi? I'm like, oh, wow, you have Wi-Fi? Stop it.
Yeah. So on to the next question. Um, some of your like what are some of your experiences growing up in the Portuguese American community? Um, like how would you say they how do I word this? Yeah, this is a weird sought out question. Trace, if you will, some oh, I get it. Okay. So if you could like bring back some of your experiences and like describe some of your experiences of like growing up in the valley like throughout your life, how has it been from like as a kid until like now? Like has it been like I'm pretty sure it wasn't smooth sailing, but how would you say it was compared to like say some of the other people that have been here the whole time, like just Americans compared to just you being Portuguese American, how would you say like that come up through life has really been for you?
You know, uh, it's almost like, I want to say, in a sense, humbling. Because again, we grew up with how our parents knew. This is what you did. As myself and my cousins, as we went through schooling and education and experiences, then okay, we would introduce certain things and kind of bring it in, and then our parents would learn from us. In some cases, our parents would kind of see what's happening with whether it's friends and family, and bring that on. Um, but like I touched on earlier, if I didn't know something, I would play dumb because I don't want to be made fun of. And so something like that, I have a very, very passionate stance on, you know, an immigrant child, or a child with that maybe not, going through different situations, maybe economic differences, whatever it is, because I remember that, and it was hurtful, you know. And I don't want to necessarily it was bullying, but that's, you didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go ask my parents. I couldn't be like, hey, what is this? They had no idea what it was. Just like, schoolwork. How many times I have a teacher say, ask your mom and dad to help you with schoolwork? I'm like, are you kidding? And but then as a student, you were told, do what the teacher says, or else they're going to hit you, or else they're going to do something. There's discipline. And so I would be like, well, I can't go to school, back to school, without finishing my homework. But I don't know how to do it. And I remember one time I thought I said, I can't figure it out. And then the teacher, like, well, didn't you ask your mom or dad? I go, they don't speak English, let alone figure out a math problem. So there'd be times I just sit there going, out of frustration. And
Yeah.
of course, now that's not the case. It's definitely a lot better, especially with some schools have these immersion programs, for immigrant kids, or with, even just different learning styles. But that wasn't the case then. In fact, I even remember one teacher that to this day, and I I appreciate all educators, but this one, I hated her with a passion, because looking back, she was discriminatory. That was it. She had something against the foreign kids, the Caucasian, the American born, whatever it was. It was there were no problem, but the rest of us, like she put me at the table with the other kids that were Spanish speaking, ESL. And the person was helping. She looks at me, but you speak English. I'm like, I know. I had no idea why I was there. So I thought I was being there for a punishment or it was because I was stupid. And I remember she would make derogatory comments. And so I've always said to this day, if I ever find her grave, watch out what I'll do. I She was horrible, but she made me feel this big. And I thought
Yeah.
I was a pretty decent student. And to the point where the school was like, oh, calling my mom in for parent teacher conference, which we had to have a translator, that sort of stuff. Um, I mean, yeah, I can go on a tangent, but I guess ultimately it's like is that exposure you kind of learn as you went, but then it humbles you. So when you see that happening to another person, whether a child, an adult, I always have the strongest empathy for those situations. Just like I also will stand up and say something, please don't make that comment, or please, understand what they're trying to say. You know,
Yeah.
I've been in situations where, you know, um, this one always stands out to me. Because it hit me because I was always that kid that I had to speak for my mom and dad, translate. And usually it would be my mom, we would go somewhere. So she'd say, hey, ask that gentleman how much this costs. Like we'd be at the Walmart or Kmart or something. And I'd be like, Mom, she doesn't work here. It's like those little things. And there was it was a couple years ago, I was at Costco and there was this woman, she was Hispanic and she didn't speak English. Okay, but she was telling her kids, because the kids were asking, they were ordering hot dogs at the food court. So the daughter, and I understand enough Spanish, I know what she was asking, like, how many and all that kind of stuff. Well, this gentleman who was Caucasian and he had his certain beliefs, he just started like, well, goddamn, we're in America, this and this. And I just put tapped my shoulder and said, you have nothing to do with this. They're not taking your money. The young lady wants a hot dog. Let her get a fucking hot dog. Excuse my language.
No,
And he
you're
looked
perfectly
at me,
fine.
he's all, that's not your place. I go, neither is yours. Let them get their fucking hot dog. It's not your business. I just left it at that. I go, if you want to fight, we'll go outside. But I don't like that because I remember being that kid, like, I need a cheeseburger at McDonald's and my mom would give me money and that was it. Or you know, this is a weird story. I had to go and ask for social security papers because there's a time you didn't just get a social security card. It was voluntary until a certain age. And my mom and dad had no idea. So the school was saying, "Oh, where's your social security card?" I'm like, "Well, that's for old people." That's what I knew a social security was. I was like, "That's for old people." They're like, "No, everyone has to have a number, a card." Like, okay, so how do I get it? So, well, your mom and dad are they don't speak English. So we had to go to this was in Newman to the police department where a person from Stanislaus County would be there once a week to have paperwork and that kind of stuff and kind of help out the smaller communities that couldn't get to the larger cities. So my mom's like, "Do you know where it's at?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's at the police station. Went on a field trip." So I go to the police station, go inside, ask the young lady, I'm like, "Hi, I need to get a social security card." And she's like, What?" I'm like, I need a social security card. And so she said, "There's papers and for me and my sister." She's like, "Where's your mom?" I go, "She's in the car with my sister." And she's like, "Well, she needs to come here." I go, "But she doesn't speak English." And this lady was like, "Well, I can't do anything. You need to bring your mom and dad and this and this and this." I was like, so I had to start all over. And then I finally, my mom was like, "Let's go ask Mrs. Castro." There's always a nice Portuguese person that would help us out. And eventually I went back with Miss Castro, and the lady's like, "Weren't you just here, Mom?" "Yes, my mom doesn't speak English. I need a card. Come on, help a brother out." It was that kind of stuff. And so those little nuances, it's like I remember, and I have a soft spot when a person is in the need or maybe just doesn't understand, you know. And I also defend that person. It's like, and respectfully, just like the gentleman, leave them alone. They
Yeah.
don't do anything to you. The young girl wants a hot dog, and the mother's giving her money to buy a hot dog. Leave it alone. That's none of your fucking business. I'm sorry. I get passionate about that because it just
No, it's perfectly fine.
but I've
Uh,
been and I'm not I've been fortunate. At the same time, I just remember sitting there like the times where I felt so embarrassed or felt so stupid, but then I would keep it to myself. I wouldn't react. I wouldn't say anything. That one teacher that I hated, she slapped me because I lost a piece of something. And I was like, "Hey, I'm missing this." "Well, you did something." And when they found the piece, she just smacked me across the face, and I kept it to myself. Of course, I was crying, here I'm 5 years old, and years later, I somehow brought it up to my parents, and my mom and dad, "She what?" I'm like, "Yeah, she hit me for this, but you always told me if you don't do the right thing, the teachers will slap you." She's like, "No, she's not gonna slap you." I'm like, "Well, she's dead, I don't know. She's gone." But that's just how it was. And that also too, we grew up, you respect your elders and everything else in between, and that's how it was. You respected people of authority. You respected people, whether it's your family, an older gentleman. I mean, we always said sir or ma'am.
Yeah.
And now it's like point, and sometimes it's like in a rude comment. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry.
Oh, it's perfectly. It answers a lot of questions actually.
Okay.
It especially leads to this one. So obviously you're very passionate and proud of who you are.
Mhm.
Um, what like what moments have you said like you are obviously like standing up to that guy, very like
Mhm.
respectful, like it shows like your character, your personality. What other moments like that have you like showed to be proud of your Portuguese heritage like that?
Well, just being involved in general. So I got involved with the Portuguese celebration in Pismo Beach. And, as I got older, I'd be proud to say I'm Portuguese, I speak it, I've done this and that, and not shy away for sake of what if I'm made fun of or what if it's looked at differently. So then that kind of led to me is like I want to continue the culture, just it's pretty much how I was raised, but also continue the traditions. So understanding that we're not all 100% Portuguese anymore, the way the genders are breaking down, but at least we're keeping the culture alive and hopefully to keep sharing that and also, showing that we celebrate who we are in our diversity.
Yeah. So to what extent do you believe being Portuguese American has shaped the way that you move through life, both professionally and personally?
Um, Maybe not so much as being Portuguese, but just being in family of immigrants is, not taking things for granted and also taking advantage of opportunities where you can and seize them, and at the same time working hard for it. I don't think it matters what culture you come from. Everyone has a challenge. Everyone has opportunities. Everyone has successes, but also depends on how much effort you put into it. Um, and then you add that your own culture. I mean, that's knowing your own history and understanding it, and even maybe tying it together. Like, oh yeah, that's how my grandparents or my great grandparents or my uncles did it when they came here. This opportunity we had. Obviously, things have improved for us where we're not working as hard per se, and we have these advantages, but still, it kind of comes in hand. So I don't think necessarily just because of being Portuguese, but just a family of immigrants coming with some sort of a adversity, if you would. Although I don't like necessarily using that term because we didn't go without, but we didn't have the things that we can have today. Things come out so much easier. Where back then, it's like it doesn't just fall out of the sky.
No, yeah, I get that perfectly, 100%. It's it is very like enjoy like cool and just like it blows my mind how like culturally similar that just off of your experiences that not only I can relate to, but like hearing stories from my grandparents, my dad, just like the similarities are very much there, and it's just like it's cool just to hear other people and other communities have gone through the same experiences that we
Yeah,
have, even though we're like are we originate from complete almost different sides of the world. So it's
right.
very cool to hear. Tell you this right now, it's very cool.
Good.
Um, what does being Portuguese American mean to you?
Being Portuguese American, to me personally, is remembering where I came from, or at least where my roots originate from. I mean, yes, I did not come from the island, but I do feel like I did, just in the way we were raised. Obviously, I wasn't exposed to it as, let's say, my cousins who are living there. That's totally different. But then us here in the U.S., our family in the U.S., we have those close ties. So I think if anything, it's more knowing that history, knowing that root, that tie that we have, and just being proud of it and embracing it and being able to share that and pass it on to whomever, whether it be nieces, nephews, kids, even just, spouses. Like, my husband is Hispanic. It doesn't matter. And that was one of those other things too. It's like that was a big change, especially with a Portuguese American having a husband as opposed to a wife. Okay, fine. But that was a reality. But that's also things that evolved because once upon a time, you wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
So those kind of opportunities, but yeah.
How do you see the Portuguese American community today?
I definitely see a big difference because it's generational. I already, so, like I see where my nephews, when they grow up, what they'll be exposed to. It's not, there's nothing close to what we did back in the day. Um, Culturally, it's changed because it's there, but the passing on or the appreciation of. Um, but also even just how we all behave as people, as growing up, it was very much, sir or ma'am. And I mean, even to the point as Catholics, we would have to ask for blessings from our, parents and grandparents that you had to, and, ask for a blessing and stuff. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen now, you know. So we see that involvement. Um, some, once in a while you may speak to someone where they're like, oh, I don't know, they're from somewhere. And then other times like, oh yeah, I would love to find out more or get some more information or understanding. I also see because like in the celebrations that we have and things that the Portuguese community do together, where more again spouses and friends and family start participating and they're being inclusive. They always were inclusive. It was just like I think there's almost that fear is like, well, this is how we do it. You may not like it. It's like
Yeah.
kind of, it's, yeah, we hang it, we're killing a pig and we can eat it today, but you're probably, it's not pork chops, it's, so it's things like that. But then like we evolve.
Yeah. The different ways that cultures use what they have is always like very interesting. Like compared to some households, like you said, the pig it would be pork chops, but other than like the meat of the animals that they have can be used for so much things.
Hmm.
So, and it's just how you experience it, how creative you are with it because of what your times have. Like what you have to be creative
Yeah,
to not only make it last longer, but also feed more people.
right. Like, so growing up, again, like I talked about, there was one birthday, I'm like, can we have pizza? And at that point, I think I was 12 or 13, so my mom was like, yeah, like where do we go? Like, do you want me to make it? I'm like, no, I want the pizza from the store, like from a restaurant, type of thing. Because also too, I remember as a kid, sometimes you'd be like, well, that's what my mom made for lunch, because that's what I know. Kids were having peanut butter sandwiches or bologna, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, my mom put something in here, and it's like, but we're fed. But we didn't have bags of chips like the other kids, or didn't have like little snacks. And I'd be like, "Oh, we had a hostess," But that's what it was. And then now I'll get friends saying, "Hey, what's that thing your mom made?" I go, "Oh yeah, it's just dessert." I'm like, "Oh my God, can we have some?" And I used to think we would eat that shit all the fucking time. We thought, and then it was the big deal. Now it's like I'm now learning how to make it, so I can like, hey,
Yeah.
amazing, right?
No, it's so cool. Like it's just food in general is such like a cultural process. Like
Oh yeah, I know.
it's so great. Like, like it food it happens in like the parties, what you make in a party, it's so different between cultures. But not only parties, but like what you have like on you, what you eat. So I feel like food is a big like connector between cultures. It's either a connector or like something that you use to differentiate from other cultures as well.
Yeah. Well, even like today, I'm sure you probably meet someone, a friend of yours, whoever, and it's like you probably have a cup of coffee or you having a lunch or breaking bread and it's like it changes the dynamic. It's like it's in a relaxed environment. You're able to have a conversation, but yet enjoy a meal, enjoy one another's company and catch up on things, whatever. Kind of similar, if my family was working 6, 7 days a week, but there's an opportunity for a Sunday afternoon to sit at a table and just break bread. It was, that was entertainment. That was having a glass of wine, having a meal, have discussions. Our birthday parties, they weren't extravagant like, character parties and bounce houses. It was cake aunts and uncles coming over, us kids playing around, opening presents. They were simple presents. There's no video games and stuff. If we got underwear, it was amazing.
Yeah.
But it was still just it was just a casual time, and it was just like those were part of the best memories I've ever had. And my cousins and we almost feel like we're siblings. That's how close we all grew up. And we've been saying lately, we really need to start doing that again and not wait for a wedding or a funeral.
Yeah.
It's like let's just make a freaking reason, like, hey, potluck or something, or let's just go somewhere. I mean, we can now afford to go to restaurants, but there's a time it's like, bring something, but let's just sit down and just, play cards and just shoot the shit, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I
Just enjoy
personally,
each other's presence.
yeah, exactly.
So that's about it, all the questions. Is there anything else that like you want to say or share that we didn't cover so far?
Um, No, I mean, trust me, if we went longer, I can go on some more tangents. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but I mean, I think we pretty much covered it. And but then, like, if something comes up and you're curious to know more, you have my information, and I'd be more than happy to share. Like I said, I can be a talker,
No, perfectly fine. Yeah.
and I always love sharing, bits of history and stuff of just how little nuances growing up. So,
Well then, all right then. Thank you so much for your time. Just one request. Do you mind if you share a couple of pictures of you like just engaged or with family or something, just so I could use for a presentation?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll have to do it on my phone because obviously, like everybody else, we're using our phones now.
Yeah,
So
perfectly
I'll
fine.
find some back and email them to you.
Yes, I much appreciate. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. I'll take care of that. Sure. Probably be like later in the day for sure. But
Oh yeah, take your time. Take your time. Perfect. I can wait.
all right, sounds good.
Okay, then. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for allowing me to interview you. Uh,
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Have a good day.